Picture this. You are one of the most followed human beings on the planet. You have performed for sold-out stadiums on 5 continents. Your face has been on the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Rolling Stone. Every move you make is choreographed to the millimeter, executed under lights and watched by hundreds of millions of people who expect nothing short of perfection. And then Netflix hands you a script. Not a music video treatment, not a fashion film. A role in one of the most physically demanding action franchise universes in the streaming world, right alongside a man who has made a career out of throwing people through walls and making it look effortless. That man is Ma Dong-seok, Don Lee, the same force of nature who punched a zombie clean off its feet in one of the most iconic sequences in modern Korean cinema. A man whose physical presence alone communicates something that most actors spend entire careers trying to simulate. And the woman stepping into frame next to him? Lalisa Manoban of Blackpink. So the question isn't just whether Lisa can act. The question is whether she can survive the standard that Don Lee sets, and whether this might be the most audacious casting decision Netflix has made in years. Stay with us, because the answer is far more interesting than most people are expecting. 1. Setup and context. In December 2025, Netflix made an announcement that landed squarely at the intersection of 2 of the most explosive entertainment worlds on the planet: Korean action cinema and global K-pop. Tygo was officially confirmed as a standalone action thriller within the Extraction universe, the same franchise that gave audiences Tyler Rake's relentless, bone-breaking missions through Bangladesh, Mumbai, and Eastern Europe. The Extraction films, produced by Agbo, the production house founded by Anthony and Joe Russo, the architects of Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, have become one of Netflix's most reliable action tentpoles. They set a standard for brutal, grounded, visceral action filmmaking that has consistently delivered massive viewership numbers on streaming. Tygo is being built to the same standard. The title character, played by Ma Dong-seok, Don Lee, is a former child soldier turned mercenary. A man who was shaped by violence before he was old enough to understand it, who spent his adult life as a weapon in other people's wars. When an operation goes catastrophically wrong, Tygo is set on a path of revenge. And the film is expected to carry the full moral weight and kinetic intensity that the Extraction universe has built its reputation on. This is not a spin-off designed to ride a franchise's coattails. It is, by every indication, an attempt to expand that universe with genuine ambition. The production is helmed by director Lee Jin-uk, and it's based on an original graphic novel co-created by the Russo brothers and writer Ande Parks, meaning the source material itself was conceived with the film in mind, rather than adapted from existing IP. Co-producers include Nova Film Inc. and BNC Group. This is, at every level, a properly resourced franchise entry. Alongside Don Lee, the film also features Lee Jin-uk, a name that carries serious weight after his role in Squid Game, the Korean thriller that became one of the most globally discussed television events in history. His presence signals that Tygo is being assembled with real attention to dramatic substance, not just action spectacle. And then, anchoring the ensemble in a position that has generated more conversation than almost any other element of the announcement, there's Lisa. For the action cinema world, the question is obvious. What does the biggest pop star in the world bring to a franchise built on physical intensity? For the K-pop world, the question is the mirror image. Is this a vanity project, or the beginning of something more serious? The answer to both questions requires understanding 2 things separately, and then together. First, who Lisa actually is as a physical performer. And second, exactly what standard Don Lee's presence demands. Let's start with Lisa. Lisa's background. To understand what Lisa brings to Tygo, you have to go back to the very beginning and reconsider what the word pop star actually means when it's applied to her. Lalisa Manoban was born in Buriram, Thailand in 1997. At 13 years old, she traveled to audition for YG Entertainment, one of Korea's 3 dominant entertainment companies, at an open call in Bangkok. More than 4,000 people showed up that day. Lisa was one of 10 who passed through. She then relocated to Seoul, leaving her family and her country behind, to begin training as a K-pop idol. That word, trainee, understates what the process actually involves. Idol training in the Korean system is rigorous by any objective measure. Trainees drill choreography for hours every single day. They learn to maintain synchronization at performance quality, while simultaneously managing stage presence, emotional expression, camera awareness, vocal output, and the psychological pressure of knowing their future in the industry depends on every evaluation. The physical demands are comparable, in terms of sustained athletic load, to professional dance companies. with the added weight of commercial expectation at an industrial scale. Lisa trained for years before Blackpink debuted in 2016. By the time she stood on a stage as part of the group, she had spent a significant portion of her adolescence building a body that was conditioned for endurance, precision, and explosive movement. But here's the part that gets overlooked in the conversation about whether she can handle an action film role. Lisa is not just a K-pop performer. She is a dancer, in a technical, disciplined sense that goes well beyond what most idol training requires. She has studied and practiced multiple dance disciplines, including hip-hop, popping, and freestyle, styles that demand a very specific kind of physical intelligence. They require control of momentum. They require understanding weight transfer. They require the ability to stop, redirect, and restart motion on a dime, with precision that can't be faked and can't be edited into existence in post-production. In action filmmaking, those attributes matter enormously. Movement coaches and stunt coordinators working on major productions have noted, speaking generally about the training process, that performers with strong dance or athletic backgrounds tend to make faster progress in action choreography than those without physical training foundations. The specific vocabulary is different, but the underlying body literacy is already there. That said, dancing and action filmmaking are not the same thing, and Netflix and Agbo absolutely knew that when they cast her. So why Lisa, beyond the commercial logic of her global following? Part of the answer arrived in early 2025, when HBO's The White Lotus Season 3 debuted with Lisa in a supporting role. It marked her formal transition from performer to screen actor. Her role was not designed as a major dramatic showcase. The White Lotus ensemble is structured to give space to many characters across its season arc, but the reception was warm and, more importantly, specific. Critics noted her natural screen presence, her composure in front of the camera, and her ability to be present in a scene without appearing to be working at it. For a first acting credit in a critically respected prestige production, that is a meaningful signal. Netflix and Agbo saw something there. They saw someone who already knew how to inhabit a performance space, who could be still as well as explosive, and who brought a global profile that would give the film reach that purely conventional casting could never match. The commercial case for Lisa in Tygo is clear enough. The creative case is becoming clearer. But understanding both requires knowing what she's actually walking into, which means understanding what Don Lee's presence on a set actually demands. And that's a standard that deserves its own conversation. 3. Don Lee's standard. There is a particular kind of physical performer in action cinema that might be described as authentically formidable. Not formidable through choreography or camera tricks or clever editing, but formidable in a way that reads at a gut level, before anyone has done anything at all. It's rarer than it sounds. Jackie Chan built a career on it. Iko Uwais has it. Scott Adkins has a version of it. And in Korean cinema, Ma Dong-seok, Don Lee, has it in a way that is almost uniquely his own. Part of it is, unavoidably, physical. Don Lee is a large, powerfully built man. His frame communicates mass and force before a single line of dialogue has been spoken, before a single punch has been thrown. That's not something a performance coach can manufacture. It's either there or it isn't. But what actually makes him compelling and genuinely demanding as a scene partner goes beyond his physique. It's his specific brand of physical commitment, the ability to convey violence that feels controlled, weighted, and real without ever appearing to be trying too hard. He doesn't perform force. He embodies it. His breakout international moment came with Train to Busan in 2016, the Korean zombie thriller that swept through global film circles and introduced countless international viewers to contemporary Korean genre cinema. His character, a working-class man protecting his pregnant wife in a train car overrun with the infected, became iconic in large part because of the physical believability Don Lee brought to a scenario that could easily have tipped into absurdity. A sequence in which he fights through packed train cars with his bare hands became one of the most celebrated genre sequences of the decade. And it worked because the audience, on a genuine visceral level, believed he could do it. The Roundup franchise deepened that reputation into something truly rare, a domestic franchise built almost entirely around his persona. Playing Detective Ma Seok-do, a cop whose primary investigative technique is essentially delivering overwhelming physical consequences to criminals, Don Lee created one of the most beloved action personas in Korean film history. The franchise has broken domestic box office records and developed international followings specifically because his performance style is so precisely defined, calm, almost relaxed intensity, from a man who appears to have no upper register of physical output available to him. His Marvel appearance in Eternals, while the film itself received polarized reviews, confirmed that he could operate within the infrastructure of a major international franchise production, including the extensive physical preparation that those productions routinely require. Now consider what that resume actually means for anyone sharing a frame with him. Productions built around Don Lee's physical presence are structured around his output and his standards. The Extraction universe, specifically, has been built on a philosophy of grounded, visceral action. Sequences that feel physically real rather than stylized or fantastical, where the weight of a punch, the cost of a fall, and the exhaustion of a sustained fight are all legible to the audience. That commitment to physical authenticity doesn't arrive by accident. It requires preparation, extensive, structured, demanding preparation, from everyone in the frame. Sam Hargrave, director of the first two Extraction films, has spoken in various interviews about the physical demands those productions placed on the cast. He built a team around a philosophy that action sequences should feel lived in, not performed, and that requires everyone on screen to have done the work. For Tygo, with director Lee Jin-uk carrying the franchise's visual and tonal DNA forward, there is every reason to expect those standards apply. Productions at this budget level, with this franchise positioning, and with a co-star of Don Lee's caliber, do not take shortcuts in physical preparation. The infrastructure doesn't permit it. So what does that mean for Lisa? What would meeting that standard actually require from someone coming in from her specific background? That's where the picture gets both complicated and genuinely compelling. Because the training process for Tygo is one of the most discussed and least confirmed elements of this entire production. 4. The training angle. Here is the straightforward truth about what is publicly known regarding Lisa's specific training program for Tygo. Very little has been officially confirmed. There are no verified reports of her specific workout regimen, no production-released training footage, no interviews where she walked through a detailed breakdown of her preparation. What exists are the role itself, the production context around it, and what can be reasonably inferred from how franchise action films of this scale operate. So let's build the picture honestly, from what is real, what is comparable, and what the logic of this production makes likely. Start with the foundation that is not speculation. Lisa enters this project with genuine athletic capital. A decade of elite Kpop performance conditioning has built real cardiovascular endurance. Sustained high-output choreography, night after night, tour after tour, is a legitimate aerobic demand that most casual observers significantly underestimate. It has built body control that is exceptional. By any standard, years of training in multiple dance disciplines have given her a physical precision that translates, in a choreography-heavy performance context like action filmmaking, into a genuinely useful foundation. When movement coaches and stunt coordinators discuss preparing non-action performers for demanding physical roles, speaking generally about the process in franchise productions, a consistent observation emerges. Performers with dance or physical performance backgrounds adapt faster because the underlying competencies are already there. The specific vocabulary of action choreography is different from stage performance, but the physical literacy, the ability to receive direction, translate it into physical memory, execute under pressure, and repeat at speed, is directly transferable. What would need to be built from that foundation for a production like Tygo falls into several categories. Combat-specific movement is the most obvious and most demanding. Action choreography for major franchise productions is its own rigorous discipline. It involves learning fight systems and their underlying logic, not just memorizing sequences, but understanding why a move works spatially, what the camera sightline is, how a hit is sold to an audience without actually landing. It involves building muscle memory for combinations that need to look fast and dangerous while being executed safely. And it involves doing all of that at a pace and with a repetition level that makes the performance automatic, so that, on the day of filming, the performer isn't thinking about the choreography. They're living inside it. For Tygo specifically, a film within a franchise built on grounded, physical weight-carrying action, that standard would be high. The Extraction aesthetic doesn't flatter performances that look like choreography. It requires performers to internalize the physical work to the point where it disappears. Looking at comparable transitions in entertainment history, other performers without action backgrounds who have made credible shifts into demanding physical roles, certain patterns appear consistently. Preparation periods of several months are standard. Early integration with the production stunt team is common, so that the choreography is developed in dialogue with the performer's actual capabilities rather than imposed on them afterward. Progressive physical conditioning. Any choreography work is typical, and the involvement of dedicated movement coaches, professionals who understand both the discipline of physical conditioning and the specific demands of on-camera action, is a baseline expectation on productions of this caliber. Given the standards of the Extraction universe and the infrastructure that Agbo brings to its productions, it would be reasonable to expect, though not confirmed, that Lisa's preparation followed something close to this framework. Productions at this level, with this franchise positioning, have the resources and the institutional knowledge to prepare their cast properly. They also have the commercial incentive. A poorly prepared physical performance in an action franchise film is not something that can be rescued in post-production. There's also the dimension of preparation specific to working alongside Don Lee, and this is perhaps the most interesting angle, even if specific details aren't public. Action performers who share significant screen time typically work in proximity during preparation, not just in isolation. Understanding your scene partner's physical rhythms, their weight, their speed, how they move and react. This kind of familiarity is what separates action sequences that feel genuinely dynamic from ones that feel staged. For a film built around the relationship between Lisa's character and Tygo, that dynamic would need to be developed. Whether it was developed in joint training sessions, in rehearsal, or through the organic process of filming itself is not confirmed, but the logic of the production would suggest it was addressed. For Lisa, there is also a psychological dimension to preparation that may be as significant as the physical. Walking onto a set where your co-star is Don Lee, where the physical standard is established by one of the most naturally imposing action presences in world cinema, requires a particular kind of self-assurance. Stage performance at Lisa's level builds a version of that assurance, the ability to execute under intense scrutiny, to access physical memory under pressure, to maintain the quality of performance when the stakes are highest. Whether that translates cleanly to the specific pressure of a film production, with its particular rhythms of repetition and coverage, is something only the people who were there can fully answer. What can be said is that the pattern across the Korean entertainment industry, and across the global streaming landscape that is increasingly building productions at this intersection, has been one of genuine preparation, not theatrical gesture. Artists who make these transitions take them seriously. They do the work. The alternative, showing up underprepared on a Don Lee set, is not an outcome that reflects well on anyone involved. The preparation happened. Its exact shape remains private. The film itself will be the only real evidence of what it produced. 5. Stakes and expectations. Let's step back from the preparation question for a moment and talk about what actually rides on all of this, because the stakes of Tygo extend well beyond one film, one performance, and one casting decision. For Lisa, this is a potential career axis point. The trajectory from global pop star to genuinely respected film actor is one of the most difficult transitions in entertainment. Not because pop stars lack ability, but because the cultural scaffolding around them makes it hard for audiences, critics, and even the industry itself to see them fresh. Every performance gets filtered through prior context. Every scene gets measured against an existing image. The prejudice cuts both ways. Devoted fans show up predisposed to support, while skeptics arrive predisposed to dismiss. Breaking through both sets of expectations to deliver something that reads as simply a performance is genuinely hard. The performers who have done it successfully have generally done so by choosing projects where the material was strong enough and the production serious enough that the work could speak for itself. Tygo, on paper, checks those boxes. The Russo brothers and Agbo do not attach their franchise infrastructure lightly. Director Lee Sang-young brings credibility. The source material was conceived specifically for this production. The co-stars bring weight and substance. If the film lands, if Lisa's performance reads as convincing, if the action sequences hold up under scrutiny, if the dynamic between her and Don Lee translates on screen, the upside is significant and specific. She becomes something the entertainment world genuinely doesn't have in abundance, a globally recognizable figure who is also, credibly, an action lead. That's a position that opens doors that politely staged transitions simply cannot. The risk runs in the opposite direction with equal specificity. Action film performances are particularly unforgiving of preparation gaps. Audiences who come to franchise action films are attuned to physical believability in a way that's difficult to compensate for in post-production. A performance that reads as effort rather than embodiment, where the work shows through the work, can undermine a film even when other elements are strong. The critics who are predisposed to skepticism about idol-to-actor transitions will be watching for precisely that. For the Extraction universe and Netflix, the calculus is different, but equally real. Tygo represents an expansion of a franchise that has been one of Netflix's most reliable action audience titles. The original Extraction was, at the time of its 2020 release, one of the most watched Netflix films in the platform's history. Its 2023 sequel maintained that momentum significantly. Building out the universe into a spin-off centered on a Korean action icon is a strategically coherent move. It deepens the franchise's global footprint and speaks directly to the audience that has made Korean content one of Netflix's most strategically important programming categories. But franchise spin-offs are not automatic successes. The goodwill of a parent property doesn't automatically transfer. A new entry needs to establish its own identity, its own emotional logic, its own reasons to exist, while still honoring the qualities that made audiences trust the universe in the first place. Don Lee is the right foundation for that task. The ensemble around him needs to match. The pre-release audience landscape is revealing. Blackpink's fanbase, Blinks as they're known, mobilized immediately around the announcement, generating significant social media attention and global trending patterns that traditional action film marketing cannot manufacture. Action cinema fans and Korean film enthusiasts have been more calibrated in their response, genuinely intrigued by the premise, but waiting for evidence before committing. International film critics have noted the project with interest and some measure of watchfulness. That divergence may actually work in the film's favor. Tygo arrives with cross-audience curiosity already baked in, the kind that marketing budgets can't buy because it's organic, driven by a genuinely interesting question that different communities are asking in different ways. When the trailers land, the viewership spike will be immediate and multi-directional. Lee Jin-uk's involvement adds a layer that sometimes gets underweighted in the conversation. Post-Squid Game, his presence in any major production carries a signal. His appearance in Tygo suggests the creative team was thinking carefully about dramatic texture, not just action credential and commercial profile. The ensemble, as assembled, is genuinely unusual, and unusually capable of reaching audiences that don't naturally overlap. Everything is in place for this to be a serious film. The open question is whether what was assembled on paper will translate under the cameras. And the answer to that question, as with most things in cinema, won't arrive until audiences are actually watching. So let's return to where we started. Can Lisa handle Don Lee? After everything, the background, the production context, the preparation logic, the stakes, the most honest answer is still, we don't know yet. And that is not a hedge. That is the actual story. What we know is that she does not arrive at this role as a blank slate. She arrives with a physical and performance foundation that is more substantive than casual observers tend to credit. A decade of elite conditioning, genuine dance discipline across multiple styles, demonstrated composure in front of a camera in a prestige production, and a decade's worth of high-pressure live performance that has built the kind of execution under scrutiny muscle that most actors never develop. What we know is that she has stepped into one of the more demanding action production environments in the streaming world. A franchise with a clear visual identity, a high physical standard, and a co-star whose presence demands authenticity from everyone who shares a frame with him. What we know is that the team around this project, the Russo brothers Agbo, a director with real experience, co-stars of genuine caliber, does not, based on their track records, approach these decisions carelessly. Lisa was cast because someone who has made a great many successful choices in franchise filmmaking believed she could do this. That belief is worth taking seriously. The case for skepticism exists, and it's legitimate. This is her first major film. It is her first action role. The jump from K-pop stage performer to Netflix franchise action lead is not a small one by any honest reckoning. The physical demands are real. The expectations that come attached to the Extraction universe are real. The case for belief also exists, and it is equally legitimate. The production has every incentive and every resource to prepare her properly. The physical foundation is genuinely there to build on, and Lisa herself has demonstrated, across a decade of operating at the absolute highest level of one of the world's most demanding performance industries, that she is not someone who treats preparation as an afterthought. The film will answer the question, not the speculation, not the fan discourse, not the skeptic commentary, the film. As of now, Tygo does not have a confirmed release date. Given the December 2025 announcement and the typical production and post-production timelines for franchise streaming films at this budget level, attention is building around the possibility of a 2026 window, though nothing has been officially confirmed. When it lands, it will be one of the most anticipated Netflix originals in recent memory. Not just for action fans, not just for K-pop fans, but for anyone who follows the ongoing fascinating convergence of global entertainment, Korean cinema, and the evolving ambition of what a streaming franchise can actually become. When the first trailers drop, when Lisa and Don Lee share the screen for the first time in something real audiences can actually see, the conversation will shift from anticipation to response. And that is a moment that will be worth watching in real time. If you want to be first in line when that happens, when the Tygo trailer lands, when the release date is confirmed, when the reviews start coming in, subscribing with notifications on means none of it will reach you late. And if this breakdown gave you something to think about, if it changed how you're looking at this project, if it raised a question you hadn't considered, drop it in the comments. Are you skeptical? Are you convinced? Are you somewhere more interesting in between? The real story of Tygo hasn't been written yet. The cameras have rolled. The work has been done. The choices have been made. Now all that remains is the wait.